Good afternoon. Thank you, Archbishop Chaput, for your unwavering commitment to this issue and continued faith in this investigative process. I would like to provide an overview of the process used in our review, a review that began and was set in motion by the 2011 February grand jury report with the following quote: "We implore Cardinal Regali and his staff to review all old allegations against currently active priests and to remove from ministry all of the priests with credible allegations against them." That is exactly what Cardinal Regali and the leadership of this archdiocese did. Within days of the report, Cardinal Regali turned to me, a veteran child abuse prosecutor, to lead the re-examination of old allegations. While the depth and breadth of my experience from nearly 2 decades of evaluating sexual misconduct cases and allegations, I saw firsthand the pain that this issue brings to all involved. But I also want to acknowledge that this process does not only include that competence, and I could not have managed such a daunting task without my colleagues at Ballard Spahr, who provided unparalleled support and invaluable assistance day and night throughout this process. To respond to the call to action that the grand jury report set out, we sought to create an approach that was comprehensive, that would be equitable, thorough, and reliable, a process that would be fair to all individuals, a process that would mandate that each claim was fully vetted, and a process that would allow the results to be achieved and received widely with confidence. As Archbishop Chaput explained, our process involved 3 phases. First, coordination with law enforcement. Second, a comprehensive investigation of each allegation by a multidisciplinary team. And third, a review by the Archdiocesan Review Board. In designing this investigative process, I knew one person alone could not shoulder the burden of these difficult decisions. Despite my decades of experience as prosecutor, trainer of others in handling these cases, and understanding deeply the dynamics of child sexual abuse, I recognize that a competent investigation must be informed by many disciplines. A task of this magnitude, I knew, could not be carried out by me alone or one person alone, but I knew I needed a multidisciplinary team of experts. In addition to my colleagues, John Grugan, Dee Spaniolo, and Leslie Gomez, a veteran child abuse prosecutor and former chief of the juvenile unit in the district attorney's office, I called upon a team of well-known experts who have dedicated their lives, not only their professional lives, but their lives to the protection of children and the assessment of sexual misconduct offenders and allegations. These individuals have joined us here today. They are Dr. Maria McColgan. Please stand. Dr. McColgan is a pediatrician who serves as medical director of the Child Protection Program at St. Christopher's Hospital and is the chair of the Advisory Board for Prevent Child Abuse Pennsylvania. Thank you. Thomas McDevitt, a retired lieutenant from the Philadelphia Police Department, a 36-year veteran, 14 years as lieutenant and commanding officer of the Special Victims Unit, and acted as lead investigator in thousands of sexual assault investigations. Thank you. Harry Young, also retired from the Philadelphia Police Department, a 40-year veteran, retired as detective, spent the last 14 years also in the Special Victims Unit, where he focused on investigating sex crimes involving predators, high-profile offenders, and internet pornography. Thank you. Dr. Barry Zachary, a psychologist, and the director of adult and forensic programs at the Joseph J. Peters Institute, where he oversees the operation of adult sex offender and forensic evaluation programs. He also serves the Philadelphia County Adult Probation Department and the Pennsylvania Board of Probation and Parole and the United States Federal Probation and Pretrial Departments. He's a member of Sex Offenders Assessment Board for Pennsylvania and also a professor in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Pennsylvania. Thank you. And finally, Dr. Barbara Ziv. Dr. Ziv is a board-certified psychiatrist who specializes in forensic psychiatry. She's a member of Pennsylvania's Medical Legal Advisory Board on Child Abuse and the Pennsylvania Sexual Offender Assessment Board as well. She's also a professor at Temple University School of Medicine. Thank you. Each of these individuals brought their experience of his or her discipline to bear on this matter. Members of the team conducted psychological and psychiatric evaluations, assisted us in interviewing witnesses, gathering and evaluating evidence, and providing advice and guidance throughout the investigation and the deliberative process. Our first priority, as you know from last year, was a review of all cases identified in the grand jury report as needing further review. This initial review took into consideration criminal statutes, the Child Protective Services laws, and the internal policy standards of ministerial behavior and boundaries. It was through those lenses that we made initial recommendations regarding administrative leave. This interim measure reflected the Archdiocese's commitment to the protection of children. I want to emphasize that these initial recommendations were merely preliminary. They were made before a thorough investigation was complete. They were not, nor were they intended to be, final recommendations. As you heard from the Archbishop, in some cases, priests who were initially placed on leave will be returned to ministry. In other cases, there are priests who will not be returned. These decisions are rooted in a comprehensive process that delved deeply into the question of suitability for ministry and the protection of children. I also want to emphasize that the allegations underlying all of these cases included a range of behaviors, some of which involved allegations of sexual abuse, some of which did not. The cases we investigated were both unique and complex. Many cases involved boundary violations, a class of behavior that required us to differentiate between innocent behaviors and those that could be considered grooming behaviors, which may be a precursor to child exploitation. The challenges in evaluating the nature of these boundary violations is assessing intent and the effect on children and other observers. Moreover, a handful of cases involved both categories. Following the initial decisions as to administrative leave, we worked with the 5 county district attorney's offices. We provided Philadelphia, Bucks, Chester, Delaware, and Montgomery counties with the allegations in each of their jurisdictions in an opportunity to review each case for criminal action. From the beginning and throughout this process, we cooperated and communicated with law enforcement. We developed working relationships with the 5 county district attorneys. And we worked to ensure that each allegation had been reviewed criminally before we conducted our investigations. After local law enforcement released the cases, we conducted our exhaustive investigation into each. Those investigations were informed by this multidisciplinary team that I introduced to you today. Before we began any investigation, we first took on the daunting task of identifying and gathering documents relevant to each case for review. To date, our team located, gathered, and reviewed more than 400,000 documents. We identified and located and interviewed more than 225 witnesses who exist across the United States and in several foreign countries. And we conducted countless site visits to parishes and schools where incidents were alleged to have occurred. Many cases involved a search for additional evidence, including yearbooks, parish records, photographs, and public documents. Some cases dated as far back in time as 40 years ago, which posed significant investigative challenges. We took care to design a process that would accommodate all of these complexities. We recognize that child abuse allegations can be incendiary. The stakes are high for both the accused and an accuser. Moreover, most child abuse cases turn on credibility. The evaluation of word against word Accordingly, a process that evaluates a credibility case must be painstakingly detailed. Its integrity is only demonstrated by an exhaustive search for corroboration, a synthesis of witness interviews, documents, and any additional available evidence, all of which must be analyzed in light of the expertise of trained professionals like those who assisted on this multidisciplinary team. As credibility determinations, those word-against-word cases hinge on the account of abuse and its attendant circumstances, it is imperative that the process that vets such allegations is gathered and evaluated by trained professionals. The guidance of the multidisciplinary team not only assured the quality of this investigation, but also provided vital competence to assess behaviors and provide informed recommendations. Our process was not designed to mimic civil or criminal courts of law. Our inquiry as to the facts, however, was guided by a preponderance standard. In our context, that standard meant determining whether acts are more likely than not to have occurred. Our overarching objective in this investigation was to determine whether a priest is currently suitable for active ministry when viewed through the lens of protection of children. Our goal at all times was to seek the facts and provide sound recommendations. This approach, which was guided by the core values of competence and thoroughness, could not be short-circuited nor rushed. We were sensitive to the concerns of all those we interviewed, victims and priests and witnesses alike, some of whom were distrustful, others of whom cooperated fully with our inquiries. We were also sensitive to the fundamental principles of fairness for all. Those priests on administrative leave were provided with canonical counsel and given an opportunity to review the allegations, to be evaluated, and to be heard. Through this multi-layered process, we've been able to provide the Archbishop with a solid foundation to make suitability determinations with confidence. As part of this review, we have also provided and continue to provide advice from the lessons learned about policy and procedure moving forward. I want to emphasize that in our review of these cases, the Archdiocese did not influence or direct our investigation or our recommendations in any way. Moreover, no request of this multidisciplinary team has been denied, and the scope of our review has never been restricted. I was given total freedom, constant support, and unfettered access to both individuals and documents at every step of the process. As we near the conclusion of this investigative process, I can attest firsthand to the commitment of this Archdiocese and its leadership to respond fully to the concerns identified by the grand jury. That commitment goes to the review of systems and processes, and above all, to protect our children. Under the leadership of first Cardinal Justin Regali and now Archbishop Charles Chaput, the Archdiocese has worked diligently to rebuild relationships of trust with law enforcement, parishioners, victims, priests, and all concerned. We are mindful that reasonable minds may disagree with the findings presented, and not every party will be satisfied with each outcome. It is not satisfaction that we seek. This process was designed, however, to seek facts through competence and thoroughness, and to provide the most reliable results humanly possible. We are hopeful that most constituencies will respect the rigor applied and trust that we approach these serious cases with the highest degree of integrity and sensitivity, and took into consideration the humanity of all involved. On a personal note, as a mother of 5 and a Catholic, I wish to thank Archbishop Chaput for the privilege of this humbling and sobering task. I wish to thank all that participated, supported, listened, and challenged this process. I wish to thank all of my colleagues who are here today, my family who lived through this last year or so with me, my mother for giving me the voice and tenacity to speak my mind, and my father for giving me the discretion and judgment to find the words that will be heard. I am optimistic that this process represents both a conclusion and a beginning for this Archdiocese, a closure to a dark chapter, and in connection with improvements to policy and procedure, the foundation for a new chapter in hope and in faith. Thank you.